I didn't talk much about like seniors at the wide receiver position. You know, when you start to look at all of a sudden you have, you know, winning the season with the Sterling Griffin and with an A.J. Love and with the Terrence Mitchell, Bravo Brown, with the guys that we had with any type of experience. And about the fourth or fifth game of the year, they were all out. And all of a sudden you're playing with Ruben Gonzalez and Deontay Welch and Andre Davis and guys that were true freshmen and redshirt freshmen. Well, now having the upperclassmen back and the young players with experience, I think this is probably one of our more experienced, deeper, more talented football teams that we've had here. I think the young players that we redshirted, looking for an awful lot from. I just look at the linebackers, how excited I am to see where Corian Hamilton is, where Zach Bullock is, where Anetzel Caprice is, where a lot of these young guys that redshirted a year ago. I'm anxious to see Chris Dunkley. I'm anxious to see Kenneth Durden. You know, a lot of these young guys that weren't on the roster last year, I think are going to add an awful lot of depth to this team. But I think that is definitely one of our strengths, is the experience coming back. With that comes back, you know, I'd like to see us take the step from 30th to 15th on offense. I'd like to see us take the jump from 27th to 15th on defense. And I think that jump is a lot harder to make than 107th to 30th. You know, I mean, it's a lot harder to move up the ladder once you get up there than it is to go from the back of the pack to the middle of the pack.
Coach, is there any position changes, anything you could speak of before tomorrow?
Let's see, position changes. We've got Ryan Epps is going to go from one of the backup quarterbacks to linebacker. Clavon Nelson will probably go from defensive end to defensive tackle. He'll probably move inside with his size, with the way that he is growing into his position. And then probably the first 2 days we'll bounce some things around, and I'll probably have a more detailed view of that once we get off the practice field, maybe on Saturday, first day of pads, because we're going to try some things out. But those moves I know that are going to be made that I talked about. There's some other, you know, do you put Kayvon at field or boundary? You know, there's some things like that, but that aren't as drastic. Maybe a guy from safety to corner, but not necessarily jumping sides of the ball like Ryan Epps going from quarterback to linebacker.
No, so you're like a Terrence Mitchell will stay at receiver then, yes, most likely at this point. Is anybody switching to defensive back with the thinness there?
No, I mean, that was part of the purpose with Fidel Montgomery and Josh Brown as two junior college players, and a guy like Chris Bivens, and then we have two more, Jalen Spencer, we have two more coming in. I mean, so we have 5 defensive backs that are coming in that we have recruited. But when you bring in the 2 junior college players with Montgomery and Brown, along with George Baker, Ernie Tabutu, Kayvon Webster, you have Mark Joyce, John Legist, Jaquez Jenkins. You've got a lot of guys that are still there, and then you have guys like Durden and C.J. Gary. I mean, we're going to have a number of guys back there to compete for it. So if we can't get the answer there, then we may have to start to look at, do you start moving guys around? But to move Terrence right now, only to say, you know what, Kenneth Durden's going to be really good. Let's move him back. I don't want to mess up Terrence Mitchell's opportunity or somebody else's opportunity to contribute at the position they're already at.
Okay. Is there anybody who won't be participating this spring that maybe we don't know about?
No, everybody will be going through spring. You know, the only one, Boo Simon. Boo Simon was a freshman offensive lineman who redshirted a year ago. Boo had some medical troubles about February where he was starting to have some seizures, and he medically withdrew from school for the spring semester. He has gone back home. They are trying to figure out everything that's causing it and whether or not football is going to be a part of his future. Right now, it does not look very promising. I mean, if a decision had to be made today, he would not play anymore. And so whether or not he'll return to come to school here, and that will be a decision him and his family will make and what's in their best interest.
Okay. I know you have a huge class of red shirts from last year. Mm-hmm. Some guys had positions you had earmarked. Did any of those guys look like they may be coming in different positions for the spring after the year of redshirting?
No, other than Clavon. Clavon, who was a guy who was an end that put on some weight, so we're going to move him inside and let him do that. But other than that, everybody's pretty much at the position they started out when they came in here. Guys like C.J. Gary and Ken Durden in the secondary, all the linebackers who I just talked about in Hamilton and Bullock and Caprice, and those guys are all going to be right now at linebacker. And that's why I said when we get into it, I'm not going to rule out of the possibility, once we start to formulate our depth chart, you may take a guy that is a third linebacker and he may move to a defensive end. But if he's your first linebacker or your second linebacker, then I'm not open to moving him.
Right.
I mean, so we may experiment with some of that, but we're not going into it with any major overall moves going into this. I feel like we have some depth. We just need to see what they're going to be able to do and how they're going to produce.
Have you ever had a season there where afterward you could so clearly define, well, this is the deal? This is what, I mean, you said you're studying the fourth quarter. I mean,
Right.
It was just,
Right.
to you, it was fairly,
Glaring.
yeah,
Very
clear
glaring.
cut. But is that good? I'm not good in a way, but in some ways you said, well.
Well, here it is. I mean,
Yeah.
Here it is. And there's no doubt that being as close as we were, definitely, I think, is a motivating factor for our team, because they can realize we had 2,300 plays during the course of the year, whatever it was, 1,723 plays during the season with special teams, offense, and defense. And you're sitting here and you're 5 plays away from being 11-1. I mean, to know that you're that close, and maybe it was that one extra rep, maybe it was that one extra step, that, it's just how close it is. And I think, if anything, it's been a motivating factor for them to realize just how close we are to being able to accomplish the goals that we want to.
Tough to go through?
Very.
What was
very,
the hardest, what was not the low point, but what was the toughest one for you? Just like, man, like when you look at the heavens and just.
Oh, just every one of them. I'm just saying, because, you look at it and you go, okay, Cincinnati, where you go from the highs throwing the touchdown pass with a minute to go to the lows with them scoring, right at the very end. You go to, then Miami and West Virginia, both, West Virginia, you feel like you got it won with a field goal and you fumble, and they go down and are kicking the field goal. Rutgers, where they go down and score with a minute to go, and then we go the length of the field and miss the field goal, from the 10-yard line right in the middle of the field. I've never been through a season where I had so many games that just took all the air out of your lungs like this did, and then watched a team come back, work so hard, compete so hard, and be so close again. It's like you just kept feeling like we're going to be rewarded for our hard work and the improvements that we're making, and we couldn't close that door. Is that coaching? Is that leadership? Was that talent? Was that ability? Was that you got to sit down and look at all of it. I mean, I think the first thing we have to do as coaches is say, what can we do a better job of to make sure something like that doesn't happen again. We can't just put all our eggs in the fourth quarter.
Sure.
Because you got to continue to build your team and do it the way you think. But we've got to create a mindset in the fourth quarter where we can finish a football game.
I know you use a lot of this for experience, but does part of you just want to put last year, shelve it, and say, this is new spring, new year, let's focus on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it does. I mean, that's because that helps them make the hurt go away a little bit. But like I said before too, sometimes having a little bit of that fire in your belly is a great motivating factor. I don't want to harp on it. I don't want to, browbeat them over fourth quarter. I mean, because then you get in your first close game, and I don't want, oh no, here we go again. This is a new year. It's a new team. We've just got to look to put them in more competitive situations where we can finish those games.
Thanks.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.